on the YouTube channel there. So there's some of our recently posted content. Now let me go ahead and pause the screen and we'll navigate over to PowerOptions. So we'll use PowerOptions, of course, to help us with the discussions that are going to come in from our attendees today for the webinar. Now, I had one question sort of via email, and that was from Jeff. And Jeff and I had been working this week on setting up a specific search for Iron Condors using SPX options within the next week time frame, whether they were 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, and so forth. And we weren't seeing a lot of things that we expected. It was very interesting that the shorter term, nearer term, 4-day out and 6-day out trades weren't offering as much premium or annualized return as we thought they would compared to the 7-day out and maybe the 9-day out as well. I think it was 7 and 9. It might have been 8 and 9. I don't remember. But in any case, this led Jeff to pose a similar question. Jeff was looking specifically for spreads on SPX with a 0.2 delta or less for the short call and for the short put. The Iron Condor, of course, is a combination of a bull put credit spread and a bear call credit spread on singular security. Now, we, of course, in this screen, we don't have the short option delta available. And that's available in some of the singular spread strategies, the one-leg strategies, bull puts, bear calls, bull call debits. But I suggested using the probability above the short strike by 80%. To reflect a 0.2 delta, and the probability below the short call strike of 80 to reflect a 0.2 delta on the calls. Well, Jeff played around with this and he wasn't really finding what exactly he wanted. He actually decided to start using a different tool, and that was the spread chain tool, where to look up bull puts and bear calls that matched his criteria. But Jeff came up with a question. And he says, Mike, I hope you can explain this, or if you've already covered it, let me know. We did cover this back in April. But Jeff had commented that on ThinkOrSwim, he created an Iron Condor with 0.2 deltas. However, when he came to PowerOptions and looked it up on the spread chain, he noticed the probabilities were only 72.7 above and 73.1% below for the call. And he said, well, I thought delta, commonly came close to factoring into the probability. And it does, if you're looking at the same source. And I sort of answered this via email to Jeff, but I wanted to just rehash it a little bit in case anyone else had any other questions, or to clarify some points for Jeff as well. We're just going to look at a call chain for August 11th, 5 days out. And we're going to scroll here. I want you to, here's our delta column. Oh, I'm sorry. And here is the probability below and probability above right next to each other. So what I want to do is scroll down here, and I'm going to assume, make an assumption, that Jeff was maybe looking, if he was looking at August 11th, was maybe looking here at around the 44.70 strike. I think at the time I sent him the email to him, it was the 44.80 call. But here at the 44.70 call strike for August 11th, we see a 72% probability below or 28% probability above. And the delta is 0.28. So these are pretty much almost even, aren't they? As Jeff was expecting, you have a 72% probability below with a 0.28 delta. That's exactly what he was looking for. In our search, we would have been at the 80% probability and a 20% delta, right on what he was looking for, and why I suggested using maybe the 79 or 80% probability above. Now let's change it to the put strike. And here we're going to scroll down. Let me just make sure I don't have them in the same place. So my probability above is over here, and delta's right here next to the downside protection. So let's go to a negative 0.2 delta. Okay, we'd be right about here, negative 0.21 at the 4,390, excuse me. Put strike for SPX. 21 delta, 79.3% probability. Again, pretty close. The strike Jeff might have come across with the numbers he gave me might have been the 4,400, with a delta on PowerOptions of negative 0.26, well, a probability of 73.9. pretty close, right, to what you'd expect, 100 difference there for the probability. So these match up, and probability does relate to the delta very similarly as Jeff was expecting. But Jeff had looked at a 0.2 delta on ThinkOrSwim, or if you found a 0.2 delta maybe on Fidelity or some other service, and saying, why is the PowerOptions delta different? And I'm going to go to the stock research page very quickly. And I'm going to write some things up here with the pen. I know you guys don't like that much. Let me get a good color here. Go dark green as always. What is delta? Now, delta isn't shown here because this is the stock research page, not the option. The delta, of course, other than the variant that's causing problems all around the globe right now, in options, delta, of course, is the theoretical change expected in the option bid price for a 1-point movement in the stock. Now, how is delta calculated? Well, almost the same way as the Black-Scholes theoretical price for the option, which takes into account 5 factors. Those 5 factors are put into an equation to give us the expected value of an option. Of course, sometimes the option is trading above and considered overvalued. Sometimes it's below and considered undervalued. But those 5 factors are essentially the stock price, the strike price of your option related to is it in or out of the money, the days to expiration, the current interest rates on the market, and volatility. Those 5 factors are plugged into an equation. In a similar sense, this is how delta is calculated, except for the stock price, instead of using the current price, is 1 point higher. So it'd be 443,752, and then putting that in to see what is the expected value of our option with these 5 factors with that 1 point higher stock price, and that gives us a different price for the option. And that change from where it is now to where it is expected to be, with these 5 factors taken into account, is your delta. 4 out of the 5 of these are constants. Stock price, strike price, days remaining to expiration. Okay, there might be a small fluctuation in the interest rates, but they're so close to 0 now that wouldn't be a factor. Volatility is the variable. There is a standard equation for delta and probability that are used by all option services. But one of the 5 factors is a variable, because volatility could be 20-day. It could be 50-day. It could be 100. It could be 250. There's no one standard to what is used. And some services, like ours, like to use a working volatility for the delta and for the probability equation. What do I mean by that? If an option is 30 days out in time or more, for the delta equation, we're using the actual implied volatility of the option, not what happened in the past 50 days to gauge what's going to happen going forward, or the past 20 days, but how the market is expecting the option to react with whatever fear factor is involved with the current implied volatility across the market or across the particular underlying security. If it's under 30 days out in time, we use an SIV. What is the SIV? This is the average implied volatility of the near term, slightly in the money and slightly out of the money calls and puts for that particular underlying security. It's the average of how the market is expecting those near term options to react with changes in prices. So we're using sort of a forward looking market expectation for the theoretical calculations of delta and probability. And our numbers look very similar as we just saw with those SPX August 11th options. So what I can't tell you is I can't tell you how our numbers compare to what TOS is showing, because in these sense here, we're at the 40, let me just get there. Sorry for the scrolling. There we go. There's my probabilities again that I wanted, and the 21 delta at the 43.90 strike. So what I can't tell you is what volatility TOS, Fidelity, Ally Financial, Interactive Brokers are using to calculate that delta or that probability equation. I know what we're using, and I've just sort of explained it in that case as to why we feel we should be using that number, the implied volatility or the SIV for options under 30 days out in time. But I can't tell what numbers they're using. So as Jeff had mentioned, he might have been looking here at the 4,400 and the 4,405 with the 0.2 delta on ThinkOrSwim, which related to the 71% and 73.9%. They changed since Jeff had sent the email, so I think he was in this range, if in fact he was looking at August 11th. But rather, our 0.2 delta is down here at 43.90 because we're using that SIV, which we just saw was 0.1094, close to 0.10, that was the 20-day volatility, close to 0.11, which was the 50-day volatility, but subtle differences will change the equation and, of course, change what the delta is. So if you looked at ThinkOrSwim's delta and probability, they'd be the same. You look at our delta and our probability, you're going to see that same correlation that you expected, pretty close to it. Okay, so that's why you see those differences. Okay, and Jeff says TOS is showing 21 delta on the 4390 strike. Excellent, Jeff. So that's about where we are too. And the probability is right about where you'd expect it to be at 79% in correlation to that value. Okay, so I just wanted to recap that for you, Jeff. And the other thing I did send to Jeff, of course, was the link there. Oh, let me erase all drawings. The link there on YouTube to that video that we discussed in April. So let me go over to YouTube here, and we're just going to go into the search across the YouTube channel for probability. And this is the one we discussed in April for Stephen, and that was the probability equation on PowerOptions, a look at the determining the probability. So you can look up probability there and take a look at that video. It's only 13 minutes long, but it goes also into the probability equation, how is it calculated, and why it might be expected to be different from PowerOptions to another service. And I don't know what they're using, so I can't really comment on why there would be a subtle difference. But as Jeff just pointed out, in this case, what we were just looking at, on that 4390 put for August 11th had the same delta as TOS.